Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I feel like I've been having a lot more connection with my listeners through the Q&As and polls. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to A Catholic's Perspective, the podcast all about being a young Catholic surviving in a secular world. Today, we have a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about adventuring with Christ. And with us today is John. Welcome, John.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So John is from Truth Charting. And John, why don't you introduce yourself to those who might not be familiar with you?
Sure. Yeah, my name is John Donahue. I'm from Orlando, Florida. I run a online media ministry called Truth Charting. Basically, we make content on social media, YouTube channel, it's an Instagram account, and we take the most exciting things that are happening in the Catholic space and we blast that off into social media land so that maybe kids who have grown up in families that haven't had that opportunity to take them to church camp, haven't had that opportunity to go to the retreats, haven't had the devout Catholic upbringing, have a chance to actually see what a devout Catholic young life looks like. And so that's what Truth Charting is all about. That's what I do, and it's where my heart is.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I saw that you guys have been doing so much in the last year. You guys were at Catholic Family Land. You guys did a retreat in the Amazon with a priest, a brother?
Yeah, Brotherhood of Hope. And we went down there. There's a religious order called the Family of Jesus that we stayed with.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, that's so fun. And then on top of that, like Catholic billboards, and you guys have your own YouTube channel. I think you're really getting that outreach to Gen Z because it's what we need. You know, I'm Gen Z, you're Gen Z. I'm on the cusp. I'm like a 1999 baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you guys are really reaching out to these people. And so I guess just diving in here, how did your ministry start? How did you start it?
Right. Well, right out of high school, I began working for my parish. I had an awesome opportunity that my pastor offered me to be the communications coordinator there, like part-time. So I started working part-time there. I also began working in the film industry right out of high school too. So I was doing freelance film and working at the parish just as a communications person. I've always been involved in the youth ministry there. Even when I was still in high school, I was like involved in the peer ministry group that helped lead retreats and things like that. So I worked there for 3 years. So I saw all the back end stuff that goes on to run a parish. And I also, at that time, saw maybe hundreds of kids going through the faith formation process for confirmation specifically is what I'm talking about. And the faith formation is doing the best that it can at our parish. And the parents of the children, the teens in the confirmation classes aren't bringing them to Sunday Mass. They themselves are not coming to Sunday Mass. It's this cultural, we're Catholic, so our kid needs to be confirmed. And that's their only experience of the Catholic Church for those teens is I go to school all day long on Wednesday. I sit in 8 hours of classes, and then I come home for maybe 30 minutes, and then I have to go to church where I'm dropped off, and I have to sit for another 2 hours in a classroom and sit still. And so that's their view of the Catholic Church. Like that is where my heart started aching because I grew up going to the retreats. I grew up going to Catholic camp with my family. I grew up having this awesome community of young Catholics where we were just best friends and we got to live this Catholic lifestyle together devoutly and really like have a relationship with Jesus. And also like this wasn't boring. This wasn't sitting in that classroom for 2 more hours at the end of our day. So that's really where the burning in my heart started. And then I I became the one of the two youth ministers at our parish, and I did that for about 6 months before I decided that, I felt that call to maybe a broader like to bring that to more folks and to more young teens. So I saw the need, and I wanted to start this. I mean, I had a background in film. I've always wanted to be a YouTuber growing up in high school. I was like, dude, if God would allow me to be a Catholic YouTuber, that would be such a blessing. And I would love to do it. And if it could bring glory to God, if it could bring glory to Him, that would be all the better. So I quit working for the parish and I started doing full-time freelance filmmaking. And that's really cool because I just get to choose which jobs I take and how much time I have off. And so when I wasn't out on a travel shoot, I would be home working on truth charting full time. And I've been doing that for the past year. And I'm to the point now where I'm almost doing truth charting full time.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I totally know what you mean about the kids being culturally Catholic, but not actually Catholic. I was a catechism teacher for sixth grade for a little while. And I would talk to these kids about what the latest mass readings were. And, I would just tell them about all these things about the mass. And I would ask them, I'm like, okay, how many of you guys go to mass every Sunday? And only like a third of them raised their hands. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, are you guys not being able to go? Like, are your families Catholic? And these kids knew exactly what was going on. They knew for a fact that they were just culturally Catholic, even though they did not necessarily want to be. Their parents did not want to force their religion on their kids. And so I would have to tell these kids, you have to ask your parents to take you to church. Tell them it's something you want. And I think a lot of kids are afraid to want that because in our culture today, it's seen as weird or, if you're Catholic or you pray in public, you're made fun of and things like that. So I think there's a fear surrounding it for younger kids, but our generation has the duty and job to tell these younger kids, no, like this is important. And so I think your ministry is really helping with that. And having that background in film, like you said, how has that kind of helped you with everything? Because I see you guys post a lot on Instagram with all the film stuff. It looks great.
Thank you. Yeah, the background in film has been huge. I had a really cool upbringing. I was homeschooled, so throughout high school, I was able to study filmmaking. Throughout like all 4 years of high school. I actually started filmmaking when I was 8.
Wonderful.
And started making money from filmmaking when I was about 13. Wow. So I've been doing it professionally since I was 13.
That's fantastic.
So that education throughout high school was really cool. Yeah, it's made it a lot easier being able to jump right into it without having to relearn or learn for the first time all of these things that you really need to know in order to make content like that for YouTube and Instagram. I think also maybe it's been really helpful at helping truth charting stand out just a little bit because we're able to have like pretty good quality stuff, I think. And so that's been a huge help and such a blessing that I had the opportunity to learn that so early on in life.
If parents needed an excuse to start homeschooling, John needed an excuse.
Oh yeah, I tell everyone you should homeschool.
Homeschool? Fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It gives you those creative outlets that you wouldn't necessarily have the time for in brick and mortar schools. And also you're not sucked into that brick and mortar school system where you're around the same peers and you guys are just like, you're not learning anything. You guys are like stuck in this little mob of being in sixth grade sort of. And that's why homeschooling is so important. And I love that. And for your mission, I mean, I know that truth charting is doing so much and going a lot of places. What do you guys say your mission specifically is?
Yeah, our mission is to very simply show Gen Z that Catholicism is not boring. It's not actually formation. Like truth charting isn't for formation. It's not for education. It's entertainment with purpose. And the purpose is to show Gen Z Catholicism isn't this classroom, just this classroom on Wednesday nights. And so in a certain way, truth charting is the bait that hopefully will bring teens into a deeper desire to learn more about their faith. And then they can learn more about their faith through other means like Bishop Barron or, all the other wonderful Ascension, all the other people, and you do much more formation style things than I do. So I love bringing that pass off. Maybe truth charting is like the first thing you see, because it's so like flashy and it's really aimed at entertainment. And then hopefully that plants a seed of desire to learn more about their faith, and they can find that through other means.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I think that's something that people don't think about a lot. I don't think our generation is instantly going to go to Scott Hahn or Dr. Taylor Marshall or any of these people and be like, yeah, I want that. I did that, but I'm also weird. So, so that makes sense. But I don't think a lot of our generation instantly is like, oh, I want to learn about apologetics and all this stuff. So I think it's great that you guys are trying to catch their eye with all of these videos and, really giving them content they're being exposed to anyways on a daily basis. But like you said, it has a purpose. There's truth behind it. There's beauty behind it. It's not just like scrolling for hours on Reels and, seeing the dumbest influencer do the weirdest things. I've been guilty of that. I was like that at one time, but going
I'm still like that.
Yeah, I am too. I'm just like, I have to do silly things. I know that like with your ministry though, it's taken off. It's doing wonderful things. And one of the main things we're talking about today is like adventuring with Christ and, getting out there and things. And so what does it mean to have an adventure with Christ?
I think first and foremost, like it's different for everyone. And so my answer to the question is give everything to him and then find out. Go all in, hold nothing back, and then see what happens. Because it is going to look different for everyone. But I can, and I also, with that, I like to encourage people that it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to give everything to God. So like his plan for you, always going to be way more life-giving. It's going to be way more beautiful. And it's going to be way more full and vibrant than you could ever imagine. And it's 100% confirmed better than your plan. So that sometimes helps us to bring us to that full surrender to God, that full all in. For me, what that adventure has looked like is doing, especially over the past year and a half since I started truth charting, some of the craziest adventures I've ever been on. I got stuck in a flash flood once on my way to a retreat with my friend Jack, and that was a blast. A big part of my life, a big part of my adventure has been church camps, retreats, things like that. I love that whole vibe, that whole church camp aesthetic. Like I'm all about it. And I love the people there. You get to bond with folks so well at church camp. And there's just something really special about that. I've also had the opportunity I never really thought I would leave the country. And then last year, I had the opportunity to go to Peru, which I didn't have a passport, and we were leaving in like 4 weeks. And most people know like it takes 8 weeks to get your passport minimum.
It's expedited.
Yeah. So I was able to find a way to get my passport in 2 weeks, which is unheard of. And so I drove down to Miami, got a passport. It was just a series of miracles that made it possible for me to go on that trip. And then, life-changing experience. It was a transformational experience. It wasn't like a mission trip per se. It was like we did some stuff to help, but I mean, it was really more of a retreat. Like I went and I received so much from the Lord, and it was a transformational experience. And from that adventure, I came home, and all of the guys that were on that trip, we all ended up moving into a house together.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So now I live in a Catholic men's household with 8 other guys now. And so we just have this really cool culture here where we will, run each other in the kitchen and we're talk. It's not like normal roommates. We do morning prayer on Wednesdays together. We have dinner together on Mondays. 2 guys will make dinner. We have assignments, rotation, and chores together, things like that. We really do life together. And it's such a beautiful way to live, and it's very adventurous. And
Wow. And I think, honestly, that is what men need nowadays.
Oh,
I mean, they're constantly being beat down. If you're even seen with another man, you're considered gay, and all this stuff. And it's like, that's not true. Men need other men.
Yeah, we need brothers.
People. Yes, they need brothers because that's how it's always been, and to have it distorted today so often where guys are even afraid to be seen with each other sometimes. It's so sad because it's in a way it's an intimate, friendship,
Yeah.
because you're praying together and things like that, but there's nothing disordered about that. That's beautiful. And I think more younger men need to see that. They need to see these Catholic guys in a group. They're not super, douchebaggy or,
Yeah.
dude bro like, and stuff.
Yeah.
They're humble and they're strong. They're like Saint Joseph, and they're not perfect, but they build each other up. And that's what more men need today. And actually, I was thinking of this while you were talking. In one of your Instagram videos, when you and your friend were at Seek, right? It was at
Yeah.
Seek something, and you pretended like to be on the phone or whatever. Your friend went up to this group of people, and actually those people are some of my friends from
No way.
Yeah. And I recognized them. I was just like, oh, what are they doing there? I was like, oh, like
That's so
Francis
funny.
was there, a couple other people.
Yeah.
I recognized them, and I was just like, oh, hey.
That's so funny. It's such a small Catholic world.
It is. And I just thought that was so funny. But anyways, I just want to throw that in there.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's so important for young Catholic men to see, is to see this community of young Catholic men come together, have this community, because we don't have that nowadays. I think it's very individualistic these days. I don't know if individualistic is a word. Somebody Google it. But it is. Thank God. I actually have a word for once. But you know what I mean? Like, it's very me. It's all about my relationship with God. And that is important. But I think we glorify that too much and we leave out the community part of stuff. Would you agree?
And I would 100% agree with that. And I think there's a very special amount of people. I'll say that there's a very special amount of people in which God gives the grace to be a monk or, be a hermit or something like that. But that's because like they fully understand that communion that they can just have through the Eucharist. Us, I think like community is actually a non-negotiable. Like that's, I don't think that you can, like receiving the Eucharist, I think should drive you to real community and connection with your fellow saints. Like the people around you, like that's the community of saints. We believe in that. So we believe in our, like when we receive communion, we're uniting ourselves to God. But if I unite myself to God and my buddy over here also unites himself to God, there's a connection there. And I think we need to act like it here on earth. So I think community is huge, non-negotiable. I encourage people who live in stagnant areas to move somewhere else where they can have a Catholic community, because I think it's that important.
I completely agree. And it's so funny because I get emails and DMs from people who tell me, they're like, I can't find any Catholics in my area. And I tell them, I'm like, then move. And they're just like, what? Like, I can't just uproot. I'm like, then it's not that important to you. If you're not willing to change your lifestyle. I mean, there's differences, right? If you're like 17 or maybe 16, I mean, you can't move anywhere by yourself. Right. That's different. Yeah. But these are people who are like out of college, who live on their own, who just live in very stagnant communities. And I tell them, I'm like, you can pick up and move somewhere else if it's that important to you, or start your own community there. Make it less stagnant. Be the person that makes that change. Because I think we need more people. And like you said, that takes a certain amount of gifted people to be, monks or priests. It also takes a certain gifted person to be a community leader. But you could definitely put it out there and be like, hey, I had this idea. I really want to start a community of young adults here. I need help. Would anybody be willing to do this with me? Asking for help is so important these days, and so few people do it. I mean, I'm sure you have a team, right? A team of people or people.
I have some friends who help me out. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what helps too. I mean, for the most part, I know you probably started it on your own, but when it comes together, you really do form that community, and that is what helps us. We learn that saints create saints. Iron sharpens iron. Yeah. And we really do need that today. And so for people who are living in those stagnant communities, I know you would say move. Do you have any other, advice for them if maybe they're too young to move or they can't?
Yeah. Oh, man. There's a lot of great resources now online to learn more about your faith. That's one thing that I would love to see Truth Charting hopefully have a hand in maybe a few years down the road is a map of like vibrant Catholic communities around America in different age groups. So high school age group and college age groups. That where you can watch a video, a truth charting video, and you get inspired by what you see there, and you say, I want that. And then all you have to do is click a link, and then you can find the nearest Catholic community, because chances are there's probably not one 15 minutes away, but there might be one an hour away. And so I want that to be a part of what truth charting does in the future. I've started the map, but it's proving that it's probably going to need more attention in order to make that map really work well, because like we're talking about the entire United States here. So
it's a lot.
Yeah. So that would be one great thing that I hope to have as a resource for people in the future who are struggling with that. As far as like what can you do right now? I know teenagers who are really into their faith, but their parents aren't. And that's heartbreaking, because their parents they have authority over them. They make the call. But try to go to try to find a different parish that has a more vibrant community if you can. Man, it's just a really tough thing. But then are you depriving that parish that you're at of having a vibrant young person? That's just like a whole debate that's going on right now. I think that you got to pull, like in the same way that you need to pull the plank out of your own eye before you start helping your brother. That's kind of the attitude that I maybe take towards parishes that aren't feeding you. And I could be totally wrong on that and out of place, but that's how I feel right now, because I was fed growing up, and it's been such a blessing that I have been so grateful for. And I know so many people who were not fed and wish they were. And I think I don't think there's any shame in doing what it takes to find that community.
I agree. And I mean, it's so true though, because there's that split, right? If you go to a different parish, then the parish you're at is just going to dwindle even more, And so there is that discernment where it's like, okay, do you need the community more, or are you still vibrant enough where you can provide community for that parish? Because I think if we're suffering ourselves and we need community, then we have to go seek it out.
And maybe that's a good tool for discernment, I think, is God offering you the grace to do that? And if not, then go with the other option. If God is not offering you the grace to be the community leader in your community, if he's not giving you that grace, and you just like, you're getting totally pummeled, then it's probably okay to go.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's hard to discern for young people. And I always tell them to go to their priest and be like, is there a young adult group here? Because sometimes they're kind of secretive about it unless you're in the clique. It's kind of weird. I knew a couple churches like that where they didn't have anything on their website. But then I asked them, like, do you guys have a young adult group? And they were like, oh yeah, we meet every Friday night. And I'm like, okay, and where is it on your website? But other churches, they're pretty good at it too. Something I've seen with a lot of young adult groups, though, is that, when they say young adult group, sometimes they say the cutoff is like 38. And I'm like, I feel like after maybe 28, you're no longer a young adult. That's just personally, not that you're old, but I think you're a regular adult then. You know what I mean? And I think that scares away the younger adults who are more like 18 to 25. Because there's older people who go to these events, and nothing against them, but I think there needs to be a separate group for them, and then a separate group for the young adults, who are, maybe 16, 25, 18, 25. Because I do think having too many older Catholics there, usually the older Catholics tend to treat it more like a dating session than an adult group, at least in my experience. I mean, I did meet my fiance while I was at a young adult group, so I'm not saying anything. Hypocrite. But I mean, I wasn't seeking it out. But I do find that to be an issue as well in those types of situations. And it can be also really difficult to tell if God is giving you that grace, because I think a lot of us have that desire to go to our parish and to start something. But to know if you're really called to it, do you have any advice in that area if somebody maybe isn't sure if they're called to it, but still maybe wants to do it?
Yeah. So if your heart is burning, you can, and if it's been consistently burning, if it's not like a retreat high that like just happened last week, if it's like 3 or 4 weeks after the retreat, if it's like 5 weeks after the retreat, you still have this consistent burning in your heart for community. I'd say that consistency is probably, from the Lord, and it's okay to take action. Like, give yourself permission to take action for what your heart is burning for, especially if it's consistent and you're pretty sure it's from the Holy Spirit. Give yourself the permission to take action, because God can't steer a parked car. But he can, even if you begin taking action and you're wrong, he can then kind of work with you a little bit more, because you're offering that willingness to him, and then he can begin steering that. So I have operated my entire life basically on a just do it like kind of mindset, where if it's been a consistent thought in my head for maybe a week or two, then it's like probably the Holy Spirit, and I can go forward with it. Because listen, I'm like total creative, everything going on up here, spaghetti. So sometimes something will pop into my head and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I want to do that today. Like, I want to film this video. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be really good. And sometimes I really have to work. I've had to work really hard over the past like 5 years to kind of take that and then prudently do with those awesome ideas that I have. I have to prudently take those and like put them on keep them on the burner. Don't take them off the stove, but make sure that they're real. Make sure that they're from the Holy Spirit. And make sure that that they're sustainable. Like the map idea, basically, that was an idea that happened in my brain one day, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to start this map. And so I went ahead and started it, and then basically, like, I haven't added a whole lot of locations to it ever since then, because I didn't think about the sustainability of it and how it actually might take a part-time person to just like totally manage that map and make it work. So consistency of the desire to do something is probably a really good indication that it's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really interesting too, because I mean, especially with everything going on, it can be really hard when you have all those ideas, because you want to execute them right away, because they're going to be really good. And I'm like that too, where it's like I have a notebook and I write down like all of my ideas, and I've hardly gotten to any of them. I mean, I focused on the big ones. Yeah. And I definitely think, like what you said, is it sustainable? Because we might want to do something and it costs like $2,000 to do it, and that's like a lot of money. Yeah. And so it's something that, you really have to figure out, what can I do right now and what is sustainable for the period of life that I'm in currently. Because I mean, if you want to move across the world and start a ministry in like Portugal or something, it's like, well, maybe start on little steps before that, Yeah. And I think the little steps can lead to those big steps.
Yeah, totally agree.
So that's just something that I'm really passionate about. And I think also, with our younger generation, there are so many things available to us nowadays. There's so many ways we can reach other people with our faith. There's so many other ways that we can, with social media especially. And that's something that I've been really trying to implement is, better quality content, because our generation has such a, what would I call it? They have a short attention span, but also they're used to like high definition graphics and stuff. And, you really have to compete with what they're usually used to. And I don't think a lot of content creators can do that. And so it's great that you guys are doing that, because I mean, there's so much competition out there for these people's attention. Everywhere from movies to social media to music, it's just such a noisy world. And being able to add to it, but with a sense of peace, I think is a gift.
Yeah, part of what we're doing is looking at what is going viral. We're looking at what Gen Z is watching. And so part of truth charting is just studying what's hitting the algorithm right, studying what Gen Z wants and what they're used to watching, and then seeing if there's anything with that we can turn into, like you said, bring them peace, or at least drop that desire into them for peace and beauty and goodness. So like Mr. Beast is huge on YouTube right now. And so we do a lot of studying on what he does. And then, okay, like what can we do that wouldn't be sacrilegious, that would bring glory to God, that could have a title that sounds like a Mr. Beast video? Here's one. I spent like, I haven't actually done this yet, but like, what if you saw a YouTube title that said, I spent 72 hours straight in Eucharistic adoration? So things like that, we want to like try to make a splash if possible. And part of that is competing with secular content, which is really difficult because they have a lot of money.
Oh yeah. And also they keep changing. You know, algorithms keep changing, content keeps changing, and trends keep changing. And that's why our attention span is so horrible. I mean, for starters, social media and scrolling so much. And it's like you have to kind of fit into this box of everything where it's like it can't be longer than like 15 minutes because otherwise they lose them. You have to get them with a go-getter, like a grab in the middle. There has to be good animation or good type of filming. There needs to be movement so that they don't get, bored. There's all of this stuff that you have to play into.
You have to have the Subway Surfers thing on the bottom.
Yeah. It's like, how do you guys even keep up with that? I feel like that's so stressful.
Yeah, well, we're behind. I mean, that's room for improvement for us, honestly. It's like we are not there yet. We can't work fast enough. So that's what I've been focusing on for the past month, and hopefully for the upcoming months, is getting content out way quicker. I have videos that I filmed months ago that aren't out yet, and with like that's fine for YouTube, I think, but for Instagram, you have to find out what's trending today and then make a video about it today, and you can't post it next week. It's too late.
It's so stressful.
Yeah, really tough stuff. So yeah, that the answer is I'm not there yet. I'm still, that room for improvement is getting that stuff out quicker and trying to keep up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm right there with you. When I see a trend on TikTok, or I'm not on TikTok, sorry, Instagram, I'm always just like, oh, I could film this later. And then the next thing you know, the trend is gone in like 12 hours and now there's something new and you're like, what? Like what? It's insane. And I feel like a lot of the times for us as content creators, it can really take over our lives, where we're like, okay, what's the latest trend? What do we have to keep up with? What's this? How do you keep your work from really kind of becoming, I guess, engulfing you completely? And I think a lot of people struggle with, oh, I'm doing my work and it's for God, but then I lose my personal relationship with God because I'm posting everything about it. How do you keep that balance in your own life?
Yeah. Well, one, I definitely have boundaries on how much I share my personal life on social media, and I think that's been a blessing that was told to me early on. Two, I have had it beat into my head by spiritual leaders around me and my brothers that if I am not prioritizing my personal relationship with God first before I'm prioritizing my mission, I'm failing as a missionary. There was some talk at Seek that I want to say, I don't know if it was Curtis Martin gave it or somebody gave a talk, and one of the quotes was, hyperactivity in ministry is a sign of spiritual laziness. And that has been really helpful for me to learn and try my best to work with. I still find myself at 8 p.m. opening Instagram and scrolling through looking for trends. I still find myself sitting down for prayer time every morning and accidentally finding myself on Instagram trying to make a post. And those are things I'm trying to improve in and make sure that I am offering those first fruits to God in the morning with personal prayer time, daily mass, things of that sort. Yeah, it's a constant journey of trying to grow closer to God. And also what's been really helpful, especially recently, because I have this entrepreneurial mindset where I want to be grinding at 6 a.m. in the morning, working on my business. And what's really helped me and also proved to be true over the past year is that Time spent in front of the Eucharist is never wasted. Time going to daily mass is never wasted. I've been given such a beautiful opportunity to be able to make my own schedule. And so even though the daily mass around here starts at 9:15, that's the earliest one. I wish, we could find an earlier one, would be great. But even though I have to start my day really late, it's never wasted. It's been God has taken the time that I've given him and multiplied it. He's able to do that. So having that sort of mindset is good. I pray that I'm able to keep that mindset, and I pray to improve continually, because I'm not there yet.
No, I love what you said, because it's so important. I want to repeat something you said for the listeners, because I want this to be like drilled into them, is that hyperactivity in ministry is a sign of spiritual laziness. Mm-hmm. Like, that is so important for people to remember, because I think a lot of times people, myself included, I'm guilty of this, where I'll be like, oh, my ministry is for God, so by working on my ministry, I'm working for God. And it's like, to an extent, that is true. Mm-hmm. But if you do not have a relationship with God, mm-hmm. then your ministry is all for naught. Mm-hmm. If that's something people say nowadays, all for naught.
Yeah.
I don't know. Going back to medieval times here. Yeah. But it's so true. I mean, how many times do we neglect our own spiritual life? And what you described is actually sloth, which is one of the 7 deadly sins, is where we have spiritual laziness. And another form of sloth, which people are not familiar with, is being a workaholic. People don't realize that, where it's basically, sloth is neglecting the responsibilities you need to fulfill at your point in life, like where you're at in life right now. So if you're neglecting your relationship with God, your relationship with your family or your friends, that's actually a form of sloth. Even if you're working, if you're a workaholic, that's another form of it.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. That's like such a new concept for me.
Nobody ever thinks about it, but yeah, there are like two sides to it, and there's virtue in the middle. There's a Latin saying, I can't think of it right now, but my spiritual director always says it. He's like, there's virtue in the middle, because one side or the other, there's two extremes, the pendulum swings both ways.
So true.
But in the middle, that's where we find the virtue. And so I just learned about that a few weeks ago. And now I'm just like, everything makes so much more sense, because, I was putting all of this emphasis on my ministry, wondering why, it was a slow week or a slow day or something like that, and why I wasn't, on fire for the faith. And then I decided randomly just to do this series on spiritual warfare, and then about, the 7 deadly sins. And, usually you go in order for the 7 deadly sins, but I decided to do pride. And then I was like, I'm going to do sloth. Why not? Right? Or sloth, whatever. And I started researching it, and I'm like, oh, this is me.
Wow. Whoa. Me. I should probably read that. I can feeling a little convicted right now, not gonna lie. In a good way. Yeah.
Me too, because that's something that I struggle with so much, like you as an entrepreneur, always wanting to work on my business, working until 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. sometimes, not taking too many breaks. And it's like, that's not sustainable. It's not healthy. And it's not what God wants for us. He will provide us with what we need if we stay faithful to him. And so that is something that I've definitely discovered over the last couple of weeks, is I struggle with sloth, and I think a lot of other people do as well. They just don't realize it.
Wow, you're dropping fire right now. I love it.
Thank you. I try sometimes. But I think that's just something that I think people definitely need to hear more nowadays, is that there's two extremes to every deadly sin.
Wow.
Even in vanity, there's vanity of, oh, I'm perfect and I have this self-esteem and everything. And then there's the, don't look at me, I don't want to be seen at all, and doesn't wear any makeup or anything, is always in the shadows. Those are both the sin of vanity. And there's virtue in the middle, and it's so crazy how that works.
Wow. Yeah. That's so neat. That's a totally new concept for me. And I'm excited to read more about that in the future.
I'm glad.
Yeah. I don't have any more thoughts on it, because I'm like getting convicted.
No, it's okay. I do the same thing. When I learn about this, I need like a day or two to process. And then I'm like, why am I so terrible?
Yeah.
But it's okay, because everybody, I think, struggles with it. They just don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing. But anyways, but I really appreciate you coming on and talking about truth charting. and all of these, really important topics that I think Gen Z needs to hear, and even millennials and older people. But the next generation that's coming up really needs, organizations like Truth Charting and things like that. So I really hope that your ministry continues growing. And where can my listeners find you?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on your show here. Thanks for inviting me to be here and talk about Truth Charting and the adventure of Christ. The followers can find Truth Charting on Instagram at Truth Charting, and YouTube also same name, Truth Charting. We also have a website, truthcharting.com. And yeah, that's all.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it. And with all that being said, I hope you guys learned something new in this podcast, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.
'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
Thank you so much for listening to A Catholic's Perspective with me, The Religious Hippie. Make sure to visit my official website at thereligioushippie.com, and while you're there, be sure to sign up for my newsletter to keep up to date with my latest news and offerings. You can also find me on virtually any social media site as The Religious Hippie. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Father Daniel Duplantis, a Catholic priest, martial artist, and host of the Karate Priest podcast. Have you ever wondered what the church teaches about different topics? Are you a martial arts enthusiast or just someone who wants to learn more about martial arts? I'd like to invite you to join me and many guests on my podcast as we cover topics of faith, everyday living, and martial arts on the Karate Priest podcast.
A quest is a search for something. And every week, the Quest podcast will show you how we know what we know through interviews with people that have incredible stories of dedication and perseverance. I'm your host, Todd Fisher. Join me in this thought-provoking and inspiring podcast of discovery. Find us anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Amber Rose and distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright by The Religious Hippie, NFP. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure to visit the official website for The Religious Hippie at thereligioushippie.com or find me on social media for other unique content.